The howling wind of Xylos clawed at Kalen Vance's face, its icy fingers searching for any exposed skin to ravage. He pulled his thermal collar higher, knowing it was a futile gesture. The temperature was dropping rapidly as night approached on this forsaken ice planet, and his suit's heating system was already maxed out, the power indicator blinking an ominous amber warning. "Just my luck," he muttered, scanning the barren, crystalline landscape for any sign of shelter. His ship lay behind him, a twisted wreck of metal half buried in the glittering snow. The emergency beacon was transmitting, but in this remote sector, it could be days before anyone picked up the signal. Days he didn't have if he couldn't find proper shelter before nightfall. Kalen was no novice to harsh environments. As a cosmic archaeologist specializing in extinct civilizations, he'd visited dozens of inhospitable worlds. But Xylos was different. The planet's elliptical orbit caused dramatic temperature fluctuations, and according to his research, nighttime temperatures would plummet to levels that would freeze his blood solid within hours. His expedition to study the rumored ancient ruins on Xylos had turned into a survival scenario when his ship hit unexpected turbulence in the upper atmosphere. The resulting crash had destroyed most of his equipment and supplies. All he had now was what he carried: some basic tools, emergency rations, a portable scanner, and the clothes on his back. The scanner showed a large formation ahead that might offer protection from the wind. Kalen trudged forward, each step becoming harder as the cold seeped through his protective gear. His breath formed thick clouds in front of his face, and the moisture from his exhalations froze on his beard almost instantly. After what felt like hours, he reached what appeared to be the entrance to a cave. The scanner indicated the structure wasn't natural. The walls were too smooth, too perfectly formed. Ancient ruins, perhaps? Under different circumstances, Kalen would have been ecstatic at the discovery, but now survival took precedence over archaeological curiosity. He ducked inside, relieved to escape the howling wind. The interior was dark, illuminated only by the ghostly blue-white light reflecting off the ice outside. As his eyes adjusted, Kalen realized he was standing in what must have been a corridor of some long-abandoned structure. The walls bore faint, geometric patterns that seemed to absorb his flashlight's beam rather than reflect it. "Fascinating," he whispered, momentarily forgetting his predicament. He ran a gloved hand over one of the patterns, feeling an unusual warmth emanating from it, contrasting with the frigid air. Deeper into the structure, Kalen found a small chamber that would serve as adequate shelter. He set up his meager camp, activating his portable heater. The device hummed to life, producing a sphere of warmth that barely extended beyond arm's reach. According to his readings, the temperature outside had already dropped another 15 degrees, and the worst was yet to come. Kalen checked his suit's heating system again. The power was draining faster than anticipated, a result of the crash damage, no doubt. At this rate, it would fail completely within 3 hours. He would need to find another solution, and quickly. A soft sound from deeper in the ruins made him freeze. He wasn't alone. Kalen reached for the small plasma cutter on his belt. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice echoing strangely in the ancient chamber. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows. Kalen's breath caught in his throat. The being before him was humanoid, but unmistakably alien. And despite the alien physiognomy, there was something distinctly feminine about her, stood slightly taller than Kalen. Her skin was a pale blue that seemed to glow faintly from within, like moonlight through thin ice. Her eyes were large, almond-shaped, and filled with what looked like liquid silver that shifted and swirled as she blinked. Her hair, if it could be called that, resembled crystalline filaments that captured and refracted the dim light. She wore what appeared to be a form-fitting bodysuit made of an iridescent material that shifted colors with her movements. Over one shoulder, she carried a pack of unfamiliar design. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, both clearly surprised by the encounter. The alien made a series of musical sounds that Kalen couldn't understand. She reached slowly into her pack and withdrew a small device, touching several illuminated symbols on its surface. When she spoke again, her melodious voice was accompanied by a flat, mechanical translation. Human. Unexpected. You're damaged. The translation was imperfect, stilted. Kalen lowered the plasma cutter, realizing the alien showed no signs of hostility. Not damaged. Cold. My ship. Crashed. He spoke slowly, hoping the translation device would function better with simple sentences. The alien tilted her head, her silver eyes scanning him from head to toe. I am Lyra. The name seemed to be an approximation chosen by the translator. You will die soon. Temperature will kill. Her bluntness was startling, but accurate. Kalen nodded grimly. My heating system is failing. I need to find a solution. Lyra moved closer, and Kalen noticed she seemed unaffected by the cold. She examined his suit with evident curiosity. Human technology. Primitive. Inefficient. Under different circumstances, Kalen might have taken offense, but he was too cold to care about interspecies etiquette. Do you have any suggestions? Or are you just here to watch me freeze to death? The translation device emitted a series of chimes that might have been laughter. Not watch death. Lyra also stranded. Ship malfunction. Awaiting retrieval. She paused, studying him. Your body temperature decreasing rapidly. Critical danger. Kalen felt it. The cold was getting worse, seeping through his suit's insulation. His extremities were beginning to numb, and the shivers were becoming uncontrollable. I know. I need to find a better heat source. Lyra seemed to come to a decision. She removed her pack and withdrew what looked like a tightly folded bundle of shimmering material. When she shook it out, it expanded into something resembling a sleeping bag or cocoon made of a material that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. Thermal amplifier, she explained. Uses body heat, multiplies effect. She paused, looking at him with those mercurial eyes. Problem, your body temperature too low to activate. Need higher thermal input. Meaning, Kalen asked, though he was beginning to suspect what she was suggesting. Shared use, Lyra said simply. Combine body heat sufficient to activate thermal properties. She hesitated, then added, requires direct physical contact. Skin interface maximizes efficiency. Kalen stared at her, processing the implications. She was suggesting they share the thermal device, essentially body heat, to survive the night. And she was suggesting they do so with minimal clothing between them. Under normal circumstances, the idea would have been absurd, inappropriate. But these weren't normal circumstances. The temperature was still dropping, and his suit's heating system had just beeped another warning. He was running out of options. Are you sure? He asked. I mean, we're different species. Is that safe? For either of us. Lyra made an elegant gesture that might have been the equivalent of a shrug. No biological incompatibility detected. No pathogens of concern. Alternative is your death from hypothermia. Decision seems logical. Put that way, it did seem logical. Survival trumped awkwardness. And yet, Kalen hesitated. There was something intimate about the proposition that went beyond mere survival strategy. Another violent shiver racked his body, making the decision for him. All right, he agreed. How do we do this? Lyra spread the thermal cocoon on the floor of the chamber. Up close, the material looked even stranger, almost alive, with subtle patterns flowing beneath its surface. She began removing her bodysuit with practical efficiency, apparently unbothered by modesty concerns. Kalen turned away, giving her privacy more for his own comfort than hers. He struggled with his own gear, his fingers clumsy with cold. The outer layers of his suit came off relatively easily, but the inner layers were designed to adhere closely for maximum thermal efficiency, making them difficult to remove. Assistance required? Lyra's voice came from behind him. Kalen turned to find her standing there, her alien form fully revealed. Her skin's faint luminescence was more apparent now, casting a soft blue glow around her. Her body was humanoid in its general structure, but with subtle differences, the proportions slightly altered, the musculature arranged in patterns that suggested both strength and a strange fluidity of movement. Where a human would have a navel, she had a small, spiral pattern that seemed to pulse faintly with her breathing. Kaylin tried to maintain a clinical, detached perspective, but failed. Despite the alienness, or perhaps because of it, she was beautiful in an otherworldly way that made his breath catch. Yes, he managed. The cold. My fingers aren't working well. Lyra approached and helped him remove the rest of his suit with efficient, practical movements. If she found his human form strange or unappealing, she gave no sign of it. When they were both undressed, she gestured to the thermal cocoon. Enter. Position close. Feeling supremely vulnerable and increasingly desperate as the cold bit into his exposed skin, Kaylin didn't hesitate. He slipped into the cocoon, which seemed to adjust and mold itself around him. Lyra followed, her body sliding in, beside his with fluid grace. The first touch of her skin against his was startling. She was warm, much warmer than a human, her body temperature significantly higher than his own. Her skin had a strange texture, smoother than human skin and with a subtle pattern he could feel rather than see. She smelled of something he couldn't identify, not unpleasant, but alien, like crystallized honey and ozone. The cocoon sealed itself around them, creating a closed environment. For a moment, nothing happened beyond the immediate warmth of their pressed bodies. Kaylin's back to Lyra's front, her arm draped over his side in a position that would have been intimate between humans. Then, the material began to respond. It started to glow softly, and Kaylin felt a wonderful warmth spreading through it, enveloping them. The cocoon seemed to draw the heat from their bodies, amplify it, and return it multiplied. The relief was so intense that Kaylin nearly wept. "It's working," he gasped. "Yes," Lyra replied, her voice close to his ear. "Your temperature rising. Safe level soon." The enforced closeness made conversation inevitable. As the warmth returned feeling to Kaylin's extremities, bringing with it the pain of circulation returning, he distracted himself by asking, "What are you doing on Xylos?" "It's not exactly a tourist destination." There was a pause while the translation device processed his question. "Research," Lyra finally replied. "Studying ancient civilization. The architects." Kaylin's archaeological interest was immediately piqued, even in their bizarre circumstances. "The architects? You mean the structure was built by them?" "I've only heard legends. No confirmed archaeological evidence." "Confirmed evidence surrounds you," Lyra said, with what might have been amusement. "Humans have not discovered all secrets of the galaxy." "So, you're a researcher too?" "An archaeologist. Similar concept. I study extinct civilizations, especially their energy manipulation technologies." There was a subtle shift in her posture. "My people value knowledge of the architects highly." Kaylin wanted to ask more, but another wave of pain from his thawing extremities made him wince. "Pain is positive sign," Lyra observed. "Tissue recovering." Her arm shifted slightly around him, a gesture that seemed almost comforting. As they lay there, their bodies pressed together in the cocoon of warmth, Kaylin became increasingly aware of a strange sensation. Beyond the physical warmth, there was something else, a subtle tingling where their skin touched, like a gentle electric current passing between them. It wasn't unpleasant, just unusual. "Do you feel that?" he asked. "The resonance?" "Yes." Lyra's voice had a new note to it. Curiosity, perhaps. Unexpected. Interesting. Resonance. Lyra was silent for a moment, perhaps considering how to explain. Energy fields of living beings sometimes harmonize, create resonance. Rare between different species. Very rare with humans. "Is it dangerous?" Kaylin asked, suddenly concerned. "No. Beneficial, potentially. Creates efficiency in thermal transfer." She paused. "Among my people, resonance is significant. Sign of compatibility." The implication hung in the air between them, unaddressed but felt. Kaylin found himself hyper-aware of every point of contact between their bodies, the alien warmth of her, the subtle rhythm of her breathing against his back. "What brought you to Xylos specifically?" he asked, trying to redirect his thoughts. "These ruins?" Again, there was a pause before Lyra responded. "Partially. tracking specific artifact. Technology of the architects. Very important to my people. There was a new tension in her voice. Not only researcher, also protector, preventing technology from wrong hands. Wrong hands? You mean there are others looking for this artifact? Yes. The word was clipped definitive. They followed. Caused ship malfunction. Forced landing. Kalen absorbed this information. So you're not just stranded, you're hiding. Correct. Lyra's arm tightened slightly around him. They will search. Find eventually. Must secure artifact first. Who are they? Faction of my species. Believe architect technology should be used for dominance, not knowledge. Dangerous philosophy. The conversation lulled as Kalen processed this information. He was not just sharing body heat with an alien researcher, but one who was involved in what sounded like an ideological conflict within her species, centered around powerful ancient technology. And now he was inadvertently caught in the middle of it. The warmth of the cocoon and Lyra's higher body temperature had finally brought Kalen's own temperature back to safer levels. The pain of rewarming had subsided, replaced by drowsiness. Despite the strange circumstances and potential danger, exhaustion from his ordeal was catching up to him. Sleep, Lyra said, seemingly sensing his fatigue. Thermal cocoon will maintain temperature. I will alert if danger approaches. Too tired to argue, Kalen allowed himself to drift off, acutely aware of the alien presence pressed against him, and the strange, pleasant resonance still tingling where their skin touched. He woke to Lyra's hand covering his mouth, her silver eyes wide and alert in the dim light of the cocoon. Silence, she whispered, the translator barely audible. They are here. Kalen froze, listening. At first, he heard nothing beyond the howling wind outside. Then, faintly, came the sound of movement, methodical, mechanical, not the random shifts and groans of an ancient structure settling, but the deliberate progress of something searching. Lyra carefully unsealed the cocoon, letting in a rush of cold air that made Kalen shiver violently. She pressed a finger to her lips, then began quickly and silently donning her bodysuit. Kalen followed her example, struggling back into his cold survival gear as quietly as possible. Once dressed, Lyra beckoned him closer and whispered, "Hunter drones. Mechanical scouts. Searching for my biosignature and energy patterns associated with the artifact." "What do we do?" Kalen whispered back. "Move deeper into structure. Find artifact before they do. There is a chamber. Hidden. Contains what I seek." She glanced at him. "You have studied ruins. Skills valuable now." Kalen nodded, understanding. His archaeological expertise might help navigate the ancient structure and identify important features. "Lead the way." They moved silently through the ruins, deeper than Kalen had explored earlier. Lyra seemed to have some knowledge of the layout, or perhaps some means of sensing the correct path. The geometric patterns on the walls became more pronounced the deeper they went, occasionally emitting faint pulses of light as they passed. Twice they had to hide as floating mechanical orbs drifted through the corridors, scanning methodically with beams of pale green light. The drones were beautifully crafted but clearly designed for function over form. Their polished surfaces reflected the dim light of the ruins, and they moved with eerie silence save for an occasional soft hum. After what felt like hours of careful progress, they reached a large circular chamber. Unlike the smooth corridors, this room was carved with intricate patterns that covered every surface, floor, walls, and ceiling. In the center stood a raised dais with what appeared to be a control panel of some kind. "The artifact is here," Kalen whispered. Lyra shook her head. "Chamber is sealed. This is key room. Must activate correct sequence." She approached the dais, studying the symbols etched into its surface. Her fingers hovered over them uncertainly. "Wrong sequence could trigger security measures," she explained. "Need to decode pattern language." Kalen moved to her side, examining the symbols. They reminded him of mathematical notations he'd seen in other ancient ruins, possibly representing stellar configurations or quantum states. "These look like coordinates," he said, pointing to one section. And these might be temporal markers. If the architects were anything like other advanced civilizations I've studied, they'd use universal constants as keys. He pointed to a specific pattern. This resembles the mathematical representation of atomic structure, specifically the hydrogen atom in its ground state. Lyra looked at him with something like respect. Yes, atomic constants, universal language. She studied the panel again. System likely requires sequence representing significant cosmic or atomic relationships. Together, they work to decode the pattern, Kalen drawing on his archaeological knowledge, and Lyra contributing insights from her people's understanding of the architects. Their collaboration was seamless, each building on the other's observations, and Kalen found himself marveling at how naturally they worked together despite their different origins. Finally, they agreed on a sequence. Lyra carefully pressed the corresponding symbols in order. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire chamber began to glow, the patterns in the walls illuminating one by one in a complex, flowing sequence. The floor beneath the dais irised open, revealing a spiraling staircase descending into darkness. Success, Lyra breathed. The sanctuary chamber. They had just started toward the staircase when a mechanical hum filled the air. 3 hunter drones glided into the chamber from different entrances, their green scanning beams converging on Lyra. Detected, she said grimly, reaching for a device at her belt. No more hiding. The device expanded in her hand, forming a weapon of unfamiliar design. She fired at the nearest drone, which emitted a high-pitched whine and dropped to the floor, its lights flickering out. The other drones began emitting a pulsing signal, calling for reinforcements, Kalen guessed. We must hurry, Lyra said already, moving toward the staircase. More will come, including living hunters. They hurried down the spiral staircase, which seemed to descend deep into the planet's crust. The walls here were different, not ice or stone, but some kind of metal or ceramic material that hummed faintly with energy. The air grew warmer as they descended, a welcome change from the frigid temperatures above. The staircase ended in a small, octagonal chamber. In its center, hovering above a pedestal, was an object that defied easy description. It appeared to be a crystalline sphere about the size of Kalen's fist, but its surface constantly shifted and flowed, revealing complex internal structures that seemed to exist in more dimensions than should be possible. It emitted a soft, pulsating light that cycled through colors beyond the human visual spectrum, leaving Kalen with the unsettling feeling that he was seeing only a fraction of the object's true nature. The resonance key, Lyra said, her voice filled with awe. Most significant artifact of the architects. Legend among my people. What does it do? Kalen asked, unable to take his eyes off the hypnotic object. Controls and channels energy resonance between living beings, between worlds, between dimensions. Lyra approached the pedestal cautiously. In right hands, tool for understanding universe. In wrong hands, a weapon, Kalen finished. Beyond weapon, tool of domination. Could enslave minds through resonance manipulation. She looked at him solemnly. My faction seeks to study, preserve. Others seek to use. A commotion from above interrupted them. The sounds of energy weapons and multiple sets of footsteps. They are here, Lyra said. The hunters. We must secure the key now. She reached for the floating artifact, but stopped just short of touching it, turning to Kalen with an expression he couldn't read. There is something you must know, she said urgently. The resonance between us, it was not accident. The key responds to natural resonance. Calls to compatible beings. What are you saying? You and I. Rare compatibility. Cross-species resonance. Why Cocoon created strong response. Why we work well together. She glanced at the staircase, where the sounds were growing closer. The key can only be secured by beings in resonance. Single user would be consumed by energy. Kalen looked from Lyra to the pulsing artifact. So, we both need to take it? Together? Yes. But more than physical action. Her silver eyes met his. Must accept resonance fully. Deeper connection. Mind to mind. Energy to energy. She hesitated. Among my people, such connection is intimate, sacred. Understanding dawned on Kalen. You're talking about some kind of psychic bond? Simplified, yes. Temporary merging of energy patterns. Dangerous between unprepared minds, but necessary now. She stepped closer to him. No time to explain properly. Hunters will kill both of us to secure key. Must decide quickly. The sound from his staircase grew louder. Shouted commands in a language Kalen didn't recognize, the hum of more drones. He looked at Lyra, this alien being he'd met only hours ago, with whom he'd already shared an unexpected intimacy born of survival necessity. Something about her called to him on a level he couldn't articulate. The resonance they'd felt in the thermal cocoon had been more than just an interesting biological phenomenon. It had felt right, somehow significant. What do we need to do? He asked, making his decision. Relief washed over Lyra's features. Stand opposite. Place hands on key simultaneously. Focus on resonance feeling. Accept connection when it comes. Do not resist, no matter how strange. They position themselves on opposite sides of the pedestal. The resonance key floating between them, its shifting patterns seeming to accelerate as they approached. Ready? Lyra asked, her hands poised above the artifact. Kayla nodded, mirroring her position. Now, she said. Their hands touched the key simultaneously. The world exploded into light and sensation. Kalen felt as though his consciousness had been catapulted out of his body. He was everywhere and nowhere, experiencing everything and nothing. He felt Lyra's presence, not as a separate entity, but as part of a larger whole that also included himself. Memories, emotions, and sensations flowed between them, unfiltered and raw. He saw Lyra's world through her eyes, a planet of crystalline cities and purple skies, where beings like her pursued knowledge with passionate devotion. He felt her childhood, her training, her rise within her order of scholar protectors. He understood her mission, the desperate race to secure the architect artifacts before the militant faction could use them to enslave minds and bend reality to their will. In turn, he knew she was experiencing his memories, Earth, his academic struggles, his passion for understanding lost civilizations, his loneliness, and determination. Beyond their personal experiences, something else flowed between them, knowledge, vast and ancient. The architect's understanding of the universe, encoded in the key, filtering through their joined consciousness. Concepts too complex for individual comprehension became momentarily clear in their shared awareness. And through it all, the resonance between them grew stronger, harmonizing their energy patterns until the distinction between them began to blur. Not a loss of self, but an expansion, each becoming more while also becoming part of something greater. Just as Kalen felt he might lose himself entirely in this ocean of shared consciousness, there was a shift. The key between their hands began to transform, its shifting surface stabilizing into a new configuration. It grew warm, then hot, the light pulsing in time with their now synchronized heartbeats. With a final flash of searing light, the connection receded. Kalen found himself back in his body, gasping, hands still touching the key, which had transformed into a smaller, more stable crystalline object that fit perfectly in their joined hands. Lyra's eyes met his, and he knew she had experienced everything he had. Words were unnecessary. They understood each other on a level that transcended language. The moment of connection was shattered by the arrival of the hunters. 3 figures burst into the chamber, immediately recognizable as members of Lyra's species, but different in subtle ways. Their skin darker, their movements more predatory. They wore armor that seemed to be made of the same shifting material as Lyra's thermal cocoon, but configured for protection rather than warmth. The leader stepped forward, speaking in a musical language Kalen had heard from Lyra when they first met. The translation device at Lyra's belt converted the words. Surrender the key, heretic. Your interference ends now. Lyra responded defiantly, her hands still joined with Kalen's around the transformed key. The resonance key is not meant for dominance. The architects intended harmony, not control. The hunter leader laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. Naive idealism. Power exists to be used. Step aside, or both you and your human pet will die. Kalen felt a surge of something through the remnants of the connection with Lyra. Determination, resolve, and a plan forming. Without words, he understood what she intended. The bond between them, strengthened by the key, could be used offensively. As the hunters raised their weapons, Lyra squeezed Kalen's hand around the key. "Focus," she whispered. "Remember the resonance." Kalen closed his eyes, concentrating on the lingering sense of connection between them. It was like finding a particular frequency on a radio, searching, adjusting until... There! The resonance surged between them again, channeled and amplified by the key. Kalen opened his eyes to see a field of shimmering energy expanding outward from their joined hands, enclosing them in a protective bubble. The hunters fired their weapons, but the energy beams dissipated harmlessly against the resonance field. Their expressions shifted from confidence to concern, then to alarm as the field continued to expand, pushing them back. "Impossible," the leader hissed. "No untrained human could." Lyra cut him off. "You fail to understand the true nature of resonance. It cannot be forced or controlled, only invited and harmonized with." She looked at Kalen, a silent question in her eyes. He nodded, understanding her intent through their connection. Together, they focused on expanding the resonance field further, not as a weapon, but as a wave of disruption. The field pulsed outward in a blinding flash. When Kalen's vision cleared, the hunters were sprawled on the floor, their weapons and equipment dead, the energy drained from them. They were alive, but incapacitated, their own energy patterns temporarily disrupted. "They will recover," Lyra said, answering Kalen's unspoken question. "But not quickly. We must leave now." They made their way back up the spiral staircase, past the deactivated drones in the key chamber and through the corridors of the ancient structure. The transformed key remained between their joined hands, warm and pulsing gently with energy. As they navigated the ruins, Kalen became aware of a lingering connection between them. Not the overwhelming merger they had experienced when touching the key, but a subtle undercurrent of awareness. He could sense Lyra's emotions, her thoughts brushing against the edges of his consciousness like whispers. "The bond remains," he said as they reached the outer chambers of the structure. "Yes," Lyra confirmed. "Changed by the key. Permanent to some degree." She looked at him uncertainly. "Among my people, such a bond is significant, lifelong." The implication hung between them as they emerged from the structure into the frigid Xylos night. The blizzard had subsided, revealing a sky filled with alien stars, their light reflecting off the ice-covered landscape in a breathtaking display. Lyra led him to a hidden location several kilometers from the ruins, where a small spacecraft lay concealed under a camouflage field. Unlike Kalen's utilitarian research vessel, Lyra's ship was sleek and organic in design, resembling a living entity more than a machine. "My contingency," she explained, "emergency transport, small but functional, can reach orbital platform where my people have outpost." She placed her hand on the hull, and a section irised open in response to her touch. Inside, the craft was compact but elegant, with controls that seemed designed to respond to thought as much as physical interaction. As Lyra prepared the ship for launch, Kalen stood in the entry hatch, looking back at the ice planet that had changed his life in ways he could never have imagined. Just yesterday, he had been a solitary researcher, pursuing ancient mysteries for the sake of academic knowledge. Now, he was bonded to an alien being, carrying part of an ancient artifact of immense power, and caught in the middle of a conflict that spanned species and perhaps galaxies. "What happens now?" he asked as Lyra joined him at the hatch. She held out the transformed key, which now hung from a chain of the same crystalline material. "We protect this. Study it. Ensure it is not misused." She hesitated. "My faction will welcome you, especially given our bond. The path will not be easy. Hunters will pursue. Others will seek the key when they learn of its activation. And us? Kalen asked, gesturing between them. This bond, what does it mean? Lyra's expression softened. It means what we choose it to mean. Among my people, resonance-bonded pairs are considered joined, but cross-species bond is unprecedented. We define its meaning ourselves. She stepped closer, taking his hand. The resonance between them hummed at the contact, a pleasant vibration that seemed to harmonize their separate energies. I know your thoughts, Kalen Vance. Your doubts, your fears, your hope. Her silver eyes held his. I also know your heart, as you know mine. Choice remains, follow bond where it leads, or part ways once safe. Kalen looked down at their joined hands, feeling the gentle pulse of the resonance between them. What had begun as a desperate sharing of body heat for survival had evolved into something profound and unexpected, a connection that transcended species and maybe even conventional understanding. He thought of Earth, of his research, of the life he had known. It seemed distant now, less substantial than the bond he shared with this alien being who had saved his life and now offered him a new path among the stars. I want to stay with you, he said simply. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Relief and joy flowed through their bond from Lyra, her emotions washing over him like a warm wave. Together, she agreed. The ship hummed to life around them, responding to Lyra's thoughts. As they settled into the control chamber, preparing for departure, Kalen felt a profound sense of rightness. The resonance key hung between them, a physical manifestation of the bond they now shared. As the ship rose from the surface of Xylos, breaking free of the ice planet's gravity, Kalen looked out at the vast expanse of stars. Somewhere among them were answers about the architects, about the true purpose of the key, about the conflict they were now part of. But most importantly, somewhere among those stars was a future he and Lyra would discover together. The bond between them pulsed with shared purpose and growing affection. What had begun with an alien girl offering to share her sleeping bag with a freezing human had evolved into something neither of them could have predicted, a resonance that would echo across the stars. As Xylos dwindled behind them, becoming just another point of light among countless others, Lyra rested her head against Kalen's shoulder, their energies harmonizing in a silent song of connection. The ship accelerated into the darkness between stars, carrying them toward an uncertain but shared destiny. From sharing warmth to sharing fate, Lyra murmured, the translator giving her words a poetic quality that matched the emotion behind them. Kalen smiled, feeling the truth of it through their bond. Their journey was just beginning, but whatever challenges awaited them among the stars, they would face them not as separate beings, but as a resonance of two becoming one. A harmony stronger than either alone could ever be. The resonance key glowed softly between them, a beacon lighting their way forward into the endless possibility of the cosmos.